If there's one character in Cobra Kai who went through one of the most intense and impressive journeys, it's Hawk. From a shy kid and a constant target of bullying, he reinvented himself into one of the most feared fighters in the series, earning respect, power, and most importantly, the title of All Valley Champion. But just when it seemed like he was at his peak, the writers did something unbelievable. They tore down everything he had built. The brilliant character development that took seasons to craft was thrown away without explanation. The same Hawk who defeated Robbie Keane was absurdly humiliated, serving only to boost other characters. The script simply decided he didn't matter anymore. How did one of the best fighters in the series go from a main character to a background figure? How did someone with one of the best redemption arcs get reduced to forced losses and a storyline with no impact? Get ready, because today we're diving into the rise and downfall of Hawk in Cobra Kai. Before becoming Hawk, Eli Moskowitz was just a kid trying to survive high school. But for him, that daily routine was a constant nightmare. His cleft lip made him an easy target for the cruel jokes of Kyler and Brooks, two bullies who never missed an opportunity to humiliate him. Not only did he suffer from bullying, but he also internalized the idea that he could never be different. Every laugh aimed at him, every insult, only reinforced the belief that he would always be the weird-lipped kid. His only escape was Dimitri, his best friend and fellow geek, with whom he shared his passions and sought refuge from the harsh reality of school. But while Dimitri accepted his role as a loser, Eli started to crave something more. He wanted to change, to stop being that fragile and invisible kid. He just didn't know how. The turning point came when Miguel Diaz arrived, another newcomer who was also bullied but refused to accept his fate passively. He found strength in the newly reopened Cobra Kai dojo, led by Johnny Lawrence, where he learned to fight back against his tormentors. Eli watched closely. He saw Miguel fight back. He saw him learn to stand up for himself. And something inside him stirred. For the first time, a possibility emerged. Maybe he didn't have to be this version of himself forever. Along with Dimitri, he decided to take a step forward. The two of them went to Cobra Kai, where Johnny Lawrence taught his students not only how to defend themselves, but, more importantly, to never be victims again. But the initial experience was anything but easy. Right from the start, Johnny did exactly what Eli feared the most. He mocked his appearance. Without hesitation, he nicknamed him Lip, drawing laughter from the other students. It was a harsh blow. Eli felt the same old shame creeping in. But instead of retreating, he received a piece of advice that would change his life forever. Flip the script. It was a revelation. Eli realized that if he wanted to be seen differently, he had to be the one to make that decision. That night, something inside him changed. And the next day, he was no longer Eli Moskowitz. He walked into the dojo with a bold blue mohawk, a defiant gaze, and a posture that made it clear no one would ever make fun of him again. From that moment on, he was Hawk. Eli's transformation into Hawk was as sudden as it was impactful. The shy, withdrawn kid disappeared almost overnight. In his place, someone emerged, confident, aggressive, and unafraid to assert himself. Where he once shrank in the face of insults, he now made others swallow their words. The looks of pity and disdain were replaced by fear and respect. And Cobra Kai was the key to this change. Inside the dojo, Hawk became one of the most dedicated and skilled students. He absorbed Johnny Lawrence's teachings with intensity and quickly climbed the ranks of the fighters. More than that, he began to reap the rewards of his new persona. For the first time, he felt in control of his own life. The bullies who tormented him now feared facing him. He became one of the strongest fighters in Cobra Kai. He gained social status, even starting a relationship with Moon, one of the most popular girls in school. Hawk had defeated his old identity, but he was also starting to walk a dangerous path. With newfound confidence came an inflated ego. He no longer saw just the bullies as enemies. Anyone who stood in his way became a target. And then he crossed the first line separating him from his past. He turned against Dimitri. His former best friend, the one who had always been by his side, hadn't gone through the same transformation. Dimitri didn't want to be part of Cobra Kai and still saw Hawk as the same Eli he had always known. But Hawk was no longer Eli. His disdain for his old friend grew quickly. The boy who had once been his only companion was now an annoyance, a reminder of who he used to be. And to erase that vestige of weakness, he started to intimidate him in the same way the bullies had once done to him. It was one of the first signs that the line between strength and cruelty was beginning to blur for him, and it would only get worse with the arrival of John Kreese. John Kreese's arrival at Cobra Kai marked a new chapter in Hawk's transformation. Under his influence, the dojo stopped being a refuge for outcasts and became a machine of brutality. And Hawk, already immersed in the no mercy philosophy, became one of the main faces of this new Cobra Kai. If before he had only mocked Dimitri, now he saw him as an enemy. Every trace of his old life irritated him. It was as if Dimitri represented the weak Eli he desperately wanted to bury for good. And then he finally crossed the line. During a confrontation, Hawk broke Dimitri's arm. It was an act of pure aggression, a cruel demonstration that he was no longer the kid who had once been bullied. But the truth was he wasn't becoming stronger, he was losing control. Kreese's philosophy had blinded him. He wasn't just a Cobra Kai fighter anymore, he was Cobra Kai. He started believing that any display of empathy was weakness and that only the most ruthless would survive. But then, something unexpected happened. Hawk's awakening, a moment of clarity. During the invasion of the LaRusso house, Hawk experienced his first major crisis of conscience. In the middle of the chaotic fight, he saw Dimitri being attacked. And at that moment, something shifted. For a brief instant, Kreese's teachings, Cobra Kai, and his new identity didn't matter. What mattered was that in front of him was his old friend, defenseless, about to be seriously hurt. Hawk made a decision. He turned against his own Cobra Kai allies and helped Dimitri fight back. That was the defining moment of his redemption. It was then that he realized he didn't have to be a monster to be strong. He had been a victim, then an aggressor, and now he had finally found a new path. Cobra Kai was no longer his home. He needed a fresh start, and he found it in Miyagi-Do. After leaving Cobra Kai, Hawk found himself in unfamiliar territory, Miyagi-Do. If his path had once been guided by aggression, now he had to learn something he had never valued before: discipline and balance. But the transition wasn't easy. Even though he had betrayed Cobra Kai and helped Dimitri, many still saw him as a remnant of the bully he had become. Earning the trust of his new dojo peers was a challenge. After all, how could they trust someone who had spent so much time as an oppressor? But Hawk was determined to prove he had changed. Away from Kreese's teachings and increasingly immersed in Daniel LaRusso's philosophy, he began to find a new meaning for the word strength. Being strong didn't mean being ruthless, it meant having control. It was at this moment that he embraced his true identity. He didn't need to erase Eli to be Hawk, and he didn't need to be Hawk to feel powerful. For the first time, he found balance between both parts of himself. And with that mindset, he entered the All-Valley tournament. The triumph, the All-Valley champion. With Miguel injured and unable to compete, Hawk became Miyagi-Do's greatest hope. Now, he had the chance to prove that his strength didn't come from brutality but from his determination and skill. Fight after fight, he showed that he wasn't just a former Cobra Kai student seeking redemption, he was one of the best fighters in the series. And then came the final showdown. Hawk versus Robbie Keane. Both were incredibly skilled fighters, each representing a different fighting philosophy. They had once been allies, then rivals. Now, they stood face to face in a battle that would determine who was truly the best. The fight was intense, balanced, and filled with decisive moments. But in the end, Hawk emerged victorious. He was the All-Valley champion. At that moment, he had reached his peak. He had overcome his past, earned the respect of his teammates, and proven that he was more than just a phase or a striking haircut. But the peak of a champion can often mark the beginning of their downfall. And Hawk had no idea what was coming next. After reaching his peak as the All-Valley champion, it was expected that Hawk would continue to grow within the series. After all, he had defeated Robbie Keane, one of the most skilled fighters in the franchise. But instead of solidifying his position as one of the best, he was slowly erased by the script. The first sign of his downfall came during the Sekai Taikai qualifiers. The All-Valley champion, the one who had bested Robbie in the finals, was eliminated early on by Kenny. The loss didn't just surprise fans, it felt completely forced. Kenny was a talented fighter, but he had only recently started training karate. How could someone who had defeated Robbie lose so easily to him? But this was just the beginning. Hawk didn't even make it into the top 6 of Miyagi-Do. He only traveled to Barcelona because Tori dropped out, opening an extra spot. It was evident that the writers no longer knew what to do with him. Once one of the best fighters in the series, he now only served to elevate other characters. But the worst humiliation was yet to come. The final blow, losing to Dimitri. If the loss to Kenny already felt excessive, the fight against Dimitri was the final nail in the coffin. The two former best friends faced off in a match that, for many, should have been nothing more than a formality. Dimitri had improved as a fighter, but he was never on Hawk's level. And yet he won. The same Dimitri that Hawk had once bullied, the one who was never considered one of the strongest fighters in the series, somehow managed to defeat him. The worst part? The script made Hawk lower his guard just so Dimitri could turn the fight around. A forced loss, lacking impact, that only reinforced how irrelevant he had become. From that moment on, Hawk was no longer a central character. In Season 6, his presence was reduced to small, secondary moments. He still took part in fights, helped Miyagi-Do, but he didn't have a single moment of true significance. He had gone from all-valley champion to a glorified background character. Hawk's fate in Cobra Kai is a clear example of how a brilliantly developed character can be wasted. His evolution was one of the most impactful in the series. He started as a fragile and insecure kid, became one of the most feared fighters, reached the top by winning the All-Valley, but at some point, the script simply decided to discard him. His decline wasn't the result of a well-crafted narrative or a coherent decision. It was a forced choice to make room for other characters. And in the end, his arc concluded without a real resolution. The only thing left was his reconciliation with Dimitri and the decision to go to college together. From an undisputed champion, he became just a side character with no real relevance. Hawk deserved better, but to the writers, his role in the series was over. And so ended the journey of one of Cobra Kai's most impactful characters. From icon to forgotten, from champion to a shadow of what he once was. But for the fans, his impact will never fade. And that's how Hawk's journey in Cobra Kai comes to an end, from one of the most well-developed characters in the series to someone completely discarded by the script. A brilliant evolution that ended without a worthy conclusion. If you also think Hawk deserved better, make sure to drop a like to show your support and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any Cobra Kai content. And don't go anywhere. On the final screen, there's another Cobra Kai video you can't miss. Click on it, and let's keep this conversation going. See you next time.